Hello, hello, and a very warm welcome. Today I want to tell you a tiny little tale about clusters and quite some chaos, let's face it. I'm Verena. I'm actually a former HR manager / tech recruiter turned developer turned AWS consultant turned cloud consultant, and I started actually last year with Kubernetes. And last year was also another, let's say, special year to me. I had a round birthday, won't tell you which one, and I invited some people over, right? Some nice party, and a friend came over and he brought me a very special gift. Some Pi zeros, and let's say a little hint. But of course, if you are fresh to Kubernetes and you get some hardware, the first thing you would obviously think of is, let's do a cluster, right? Let's do that on my very, very first Pis, and that's basically what I've started with. There is some disclaimers. So actually, I built a setup in May this year with, I think, Bookworm. And then just for you, I built it up completely from scratch again. And I didn't realize in the very beginning, it's now Debian Trixie. So, I mean, the OS running on it. So I would say it evolved. It survived. And some things changed. So I will also dig a bit into like the tiny details changing between OSs. And then there is a second disclaimer. I'm a very curious person. I'm also someone with very strong nerves. I mean, former recruiter, what shall I say? But my Linux experience was pretty limited in the very beginning, and I never showed a real Linux expert what I've done, right? So beer discretion is advised, let's say. And I made a plan. So first of all, like always, step by step, understand how to get rolling. And basically, let's directly jump in. So what's needed, at least what did I need? The Pi were already there. I learned, okay, I need SD cards. Good, I will buy them. I need cables, and that was actually the first fight, like which ones actually, because every model needs different cables for different things. But then all cables are there. I fell in love with the Raspberry Pi imager because you can just very easily set up your OS on the Pi itself, connect to a Wi-Fi, and then magic, SSH into it. Awesome. So that was the very first step. I kind of got the basics. Then next step on this one, let's say Pi 0, let's install K3s. Why not directly Kubernetes? Because it has very limited, tiny resources, right? So the regular, typical Kubernetes wouldn't work on it. It's just too heavy. Just a heavy workload. So K3s is basically just a lightweight distribution of Kubernetes. So it will work. So actually pretty easy in the very beginning. There is some things you have to do in advance, which is, for example, disabling SWAT. So SWAT, as I learned then, is basically a kind of virtual ROM Linux would provide you, so that if the real ROM is actively very heavy, it will just move in active processes up to the swap. Thing is, I mean, it's handy, but K3s doesn't like swap. So swap off. With Bookworm, no problem at all. Doesn't work on the Debian Trixie because we have to use that ROM because it's already there. But basically, okay, cool. Swap off. Let's get K3s on the run. So I learned about C groups. C groups is basically how Linux kernels kind of manage processes and workloads they have. And there are two versions of it, right? And on my bookworm Pis, there was group V1, but K3S wants to have V2. No problem at all. Just put this one on in the command line for the boot. Add these tiny little lines, and we are all set. Good thing for Debian, it already is running on V2, so that's not a thing, but you still have to enable the memory, otherwise K3S will scream at you again. And there we go, we have a control plane. That's great. Acting as a master, we can deploy something on it. We get a hello from Nginx, and we are really glad. So, next step. Now really building a cluster, so far it's just one. And because step by step, let's first say every Pi in the cluster should have Wi-Fi enabled, so it's not so hard to interact with them. Basically, I mean, you would do the same on the worker nodes or the other nodes as you would have done before. The thing is, K3S is actually not installed on every worker completely, but on the worker nodes themselves, it's just an agent, right? So the agent takes care that they will join the cluster from the control plane node. So I need a node token. I will have to pass that to the worker nodes, and then, again, magic, we have a cluster. Awesome, right? Sounds good. Just some hygiene. I mean, it's ideal that the code, the control plane does not have to also run workloads, so we changed it and tell like nothing to be scheduled on the control plane. Cool, right? I was really happy. But the thing is, that's also a bit too easy, right? Because we wanted to dig a bit deeper into the whole thing. Now just cluster without Wi-Fi. And this is somehow where it starts to end bad, to be really honest. So that was basically the idea. I have my Pis, I have a switch, I have the switch is connected to my router, and we are all fine. It looked funny though, but well, didn't really work out, right? So I couldn't really, from my control plane, access any worker, which I could easily do before. So I did some very careful investigation of the issues, and I really tried hard. I will spare you all the details, but at a specific point, I really just said like, okay, I mean, how realistic is it to go on a conference, present your talk, and there is an Ethernet cable? So hybrid approach, right? We just go hybrid. Yes, that's maybe easier. I don't have to swear that much, and we just can continue. So that's the basic new idea. So I have my internal cluster-wide network. They are all connected in an internal network, and then the control plane Pi is basically the only one with access to the internet, to the Wi-Fi, and it acts as a NAT gateway for the others and for the internal network. So far, so good, right? Sounds reasonable. So bookworm times. Basically, I installed DHCP. I told my control plane, hey, that's now your static IP. I rebooted. I just double-checked. I'm standing in front of it. Is the IP address still there? It was. Awesome. On the workers, of course, they didn't have Wi-Fi. Surprise. So I had to really connect to them via a monitor. And used systemd networkd, so telling them on the one hand, hey, that's your static IP address, but also the control plane, by the way, is your gateway. Use that one. Some rebooting, and wonderful, I could SSH into my workers from the control plane. So, Debian Trixie, same approach, same configuration. It worked. I could SSH into it, but then immediately after, let's say, giving one command on the worker itself, it just vanished and said not available. So again, me very well investigating, and turns out, after some investigation, on Debian Trixie, they changed a little bit how defaults, or like default tooling is set up. So meaning, for anything with regard what you could before do with DHCP, it's now done by the network manager, and he really wants to have control. So the second you have DHCP on it, it might work for a few seconds, but then network manager says, nah, it's my task, so go away. So it will just conflict then with each other. Also, the network manager is not really so kind to systemd, networkd. And IP tables are not default anymore. Hello, NF tables, which will be fun later, but we hear about that. So, network manager, and I mean, in the end, it actually is much nicer with the network manager than it was before, to be really honest. You would basically, on the control plane, you would just modify the wired connection so it knows that's its IP address. Then you would take it up, down and up again, reboot, and it's still there. On the workers, you would basically add a connection and say like, hey, lovely workers, this is your static IP address, and this is your gateway. And yes, ideally, you would also enable connection auto-connect. So it always directly, when it starts, it will directly connect to the internal network. So far, so good. We are happy now coming to the NAT gateway. Again, bookworm times. Well, at the end, after quite some different trial and errors, I ended up with this solution working on the control plane. Surprise, it doesn't work. You remember IP tables not working, so I couldn't use IP tables. So again, hello, network manager. No, not really, because what we would use here is, so we first add some NAT tables in a chain. We add some filters. We do some masquerade, let's say magic. Then we have a rule set. We have to copy paste into a nftablesconf file. We enable nftables. We reboot, and everything works. So, happy me. We are back on track. K3S now. Thing is, you remember the swap thingy from before, right? So K3S doesn't like swap. Our control plane now is the control plane dealing with the internal network plus being the NAT gateway, and it doesn't like it. It doesn't like it at all. So it was always stopping, freezing, and so on. So it didn't really work. And as always, there were quite some options. I could stop. I could add some storage to it. I could shift workload somehow to the storage. I could do a lot of different things, but I could just also use another control plane with more RAM, which at that point actually was the, let's say, most efficient solution. So hello, Pi. The rest stays basically the same, just the control plane now is a Pi 4. Back on track, let's go. So we do again, we remember we have to do the memory stuff, also on the new control plane. We curl, we are happy. Until some point, because, I mean, again, very sophisticated troubleshooting on my end, but turns out, actually, K3S doesn't like NF tables. It wants to have IP tables. Whoop, whoop. So, some investigation, and actually the only thing, I spare you all the details, what I tried out, because this would be a whole other talk, but I mean, in the end, what worked out is that I enable IP tables back with kernel modules. I give some parameters to the system control. I install old IP tables, but I move them legacy. Does it make sense? No, not really, but it worked. Yay. And I was happy. So finally, I have a control plane now, my Pi 4, and because I had one of my Pis left over, I could just also make it a worker, right? Wonderful. So, K3S. I'm actually, I mean, big fan of K9S. I'm not sure if you are, but I mean, I have a cluster now, I want to do something with it, right? So I grabbed the kubeconfig from my K3S cluster, and then, of course, what would you do if you have a Kubernetes cluster? you of course would put your personal blog on it, right? Because that's what Kubernetes was built for, my tiny little blog. So completely over-engineering, but at least I have something running on it. So I just basically deployed, I built a Docker file, blah, 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 and an image of my wonderful blog. I deployed it, I made some adaptations, and yay! Thank you. I mean, it worked, and I was really happy. So I thought a little bit about, like, let's say, aesthetics, right? Because so far you saw the picture before, right? They're hanging somewhere, and well, so I thought some aesthetics, but why buy something? My boy has quite some Lego, so I stole the Lego from my son, and I built. Well, it was okay, but it wasn't really great, you see, and it was also really not so handy. So bringing this to conference, you understand why it's not so feasible, right? But anyhow, as you can see, it looks a bit different today. Still not perfect. It's actually really hard for the zeros to get these kind of layers. But in the end, what you can see here, my control plane down there, and we have my 3 zeros as worker nodes, looking a little bit nicer. Okay, now it's getting tricky and I'm kind of scared. And actually, before really digging into it, there's one confession I have to make. Pi's Wi-Fi connections and me, we are not really good friends. Right? So if I have a pre-configured Wi-Fi, awesome. Then I want to add, for example, my office Wi-Fi to it, awesome. Then I thought it would be great to really have my mobile phone as a backup, like using the hotspot. It's an iPhone, so Linux doesn't like it. So I thought, why not get this kind of dongle sticky thingy? But then the driver version was so... A very long story taking to Wi-Fi and Raspberry Pis, we are not best friends yet. I mean, it doesn't necessarily mean we won't become in the future, but for today, we are still not, and believe me, I spent hours on it. But I was clever this time, and I made a video at least, right? So you now see what was planned to be a demo with working Wi-Fi on my wonderful Pis. Yeah, let's see. If this works out, here yesterday it wasn't. So we have my wonderful locally running Raspberry Adventures blog. It's of course amazing. It's deployed, and you can see it in K9S. I have a new article. It's pretty dark, right? So I say hi from code.talks. I will just say now it's not a draft anymore. I will build an image and wait for it to be pushed. And then I will just, I mean, for the sake of simplicity, would restart my pod and wait a tiny bit. Don't forget, it's like tiny rum pies. I would refresh, and there we go. So you have now to believe me that it's, thank you. You kind of have to believe me now that it's really not AI generated, but true, but I did it. Please believe me. And if we are back home, I could even make a video call and show it to you, because then we have Wi-Fi again. Speaking of Wi-Fi, no, speaking about this very presentation today, we are at code.talks here, and I'm here since several years, and I know the love of code.talks people to John Romero, of course, but also Doom. So I think quite a few people of you are asking yourselves in a moment, like, does it run Doom? Of course, I wanted to give an answer to that. So let's say kind of last minute. I was playing around quite heavily. And my answer is, well, kind of. Don't forget, I'm a consultant, so I can also say, it depends what you would understand with Doom. So the thing actually is, I got the WAT files I need and so on, right? And I started everything. I got chocolate Doom to let it run. And then it always comes this bad V draw patch. And the thing is, but you can see there is proof. There is setting up machine state, the ultimate Doom, right? I mean, up to a specific point, it's starting up. The problem actually is here that installed everything headless, meaning so there is no desktop, like Raspberry Pi desktop to it, which also means there is no real device, let's say, where the graphics can run. So it doesn't work yet, let's say. And if you ask yourself, but they are emulators, you can even run them on copy machines. That's true, they are. Again, some of them are not working with Debian and Trixie because Debian and Trixie is too new and so on. So let's just say and stick with kind of. Okay. I'm just watching. Actually, I should be now able for questions, so we can't really dig into it. We could, if we want, I can at least turn them on, so you see they're blinking. Yay, blinking! Blinking devices! So, yeah. And we could at least do some tiny stuff like that. Maybe. Haha! Hello. And then just maybe one less questions. I'm still here the whole day, so if you have questions, we can also do that later than in the official question time. It's doing stuff. Let me try. It's actually really mean here to type something. I'll try from this angle. Can I? Yeah, it's always doing it. So let's see, Wi-Fi, please don't interact again, but let's try sudo kubectl get nodes. Yeah, that's mean. Yeah, okay, that's exactly the point. Let's say sudo. Okay, so the thing here is I configured the Wi-Fi, pre-configured, which means it always tries to connect, which is can't. Surprise. But this also means K3S is now confused, like where to go, right? So if the Wi-Fi would completely shut down, and we could try this now, sudo network manager CLI radio off. What? Right. Well, okay. Then you have again to believe me that it's running. But let's at least try some freedom. Ha! Great success. So, yam, and there we go. And I have actually no clue what I'm doing, but yeah, we could play Doom. And now something funny happens again. I'm not sure why, but wait a sec. Wait for it. No, it's not coming. Interesting. Okay. Now, long story short, that was at least what I could do for now without the Wi-Fi, radio, you name it. Maybe some very last, I promise, thoughts to summarize. Yeah, that was the free. No, I don't want you. That was the backup again. So, final thoughts, just quickly. The typical works on my machine is actually exactly the same for Pis, meaning ChatGPT and blocks can help, but quite often they don't at all, right? Because they do it for a specific OS, but they don't tell you. So that's really not helpful if you just want to sneak around and get some ideas. My learning celebrate the small wins. Like every small win, I was like really happy. So the next small win would be get Wi-Fi on it on a conference. And then last but not least, just don't give up. Although the urge to do so is really, really high. Thank you so much.